Good everybody, welcome. This is Paul Flynn, paedophiles.org for the 25th of September 2015. Just want to do a quick video on an article that has emerged, you could say, on Salon magazine last Monday, the 21st, 2015. Unfortunately, Salon has an article written by Todd Nickerson, who says he is a pedophile, but he's not a monster. The article goes on to kind of bring up sympathy for this, how would I put it, non-offending pedophile. Sorry, I mean, with the sexual revolution, and since Kinsey's fraudulent research coming out in the late 40s and the early 1950s. Sexuality in the human male and sexuality in the human female helped launch things like Playboy magazine, and these arguments that were made are being made still about homosexuality being born this way, well, are being made by the pedophiles. It's not anything new if anybody's been paying attention to it. Now, the article drums up sympathy. And especially I was reading some of the comments as well in the comment section, people sympathizing towards this. This is a vile perversion. This is what the Bible talks about. For this cause, God gave them up unto vile affection. This is vile. This is to be repented of and to flee to Christ like any other sin. It is disgusting beyond measure. But here, I'm not a monster. He says in this article. He also states, and the thing is, the article is clearly there to drum up sympathy for the pedophile community. It's an astonishing even to have to say that out loud. He states in his article, Todd Nickerson, that when I was 7 years old, I was fondled in the front yard of my grandparents' home by a man I barely knew. He goes on to write that he was molested and fondled by this older man. I don't want to go into too much detail because it's fairly horrific. Now, when talking about this incident that happened when he was 7 years old, he said, I was confused but not frightened or troubled. And he also makes another comment at the end of this section, which is called, he touched me. No authorities were called and life went on as usual. This is the argument of the sexual revolution of Alfred Kinsey, of Harry Hay, who followed Alfred Kinsey, who, I'll just bring up a picture of Harry Hay there. Nambla walks with me at the back of his t-shirt when he's marching, not just for gay liberation, but Nambla also. And who is Nambla, one might ask? The North American Man-Boy Love Association. And they certainly are going for quote-unquote consensual relations between adults, especially men and boys. It would just make you want to puke. If you have any sense of decency, it would just make you want to puke. Now, in another part of the article in Salon magazine, I'm reading here from a printed copy that I have. There's no need to read this, really, to be honest. But I'll just give you the synopsis of what he's he's trying to drum up sympathy all the way through. Oh, poor me, oh, poor pedophile kind of thing. He writes, I'll just read this entire paragraph because I think it tells a lot. I recall an event when I was 11, sitting in the family Jeep with my dad and his friend Andy when a news piece on the radio reported the sexual abuse of a girl, to which my dad said to his friend something like, they should take people like that and place weights on top of their private parts. I'm just going to change the quotation a little bit. Until they smash. Now, he said, pretty horrific imagery. He was angry. Okay, I was... I think pedophiles should at least get life in prison or something like that. I don't think it should be... the model penal code is a complete joke. They get released after a couple of years based off of, again, Kinsey's fraudulent research. But the end of the paragraph says, there's pretty horrific imagery for an 11-year-old to process. I couldn't help but sympathize with the abuser. So he's hearing about the abuse, the sexual abuse of a girl. His dad lashes out and says something pretty horrible in its own right. But he said he couldn't help but sympathize with the abuser. After all, I could recall my own molestation perfectly. Like, he was molested. And he said, I hardly felt it warranted that kind of response. He didn't feel like it warranted, and this is a sexual abuse of children. And he's apparently somebody who said, I could never, I'm just going to quote him in another part, I could never hurt a child. Although he says that basically that this is an overreaction. You know, it's the overreaction that's a problem. Michael Brown writes in Charisma Magazine, and I think if you've been listening to my radio show long enough, you know that I'm not a fan of Charisma Magazine, and Michael Brown's a sermon at times, but he is excellent when it comes, I think he's excellent when it comes to this issue, from what I've seen at least, and I do read a lot of his stuff when it comes to social issues such as homosexuality, and I think he acquits himself really well when he's on television dealing with this issue. But one of the points he was making, and he was contrasting the arguments, and I state the arguments, for legitimization of homosexuality, along with arguments for supporting of pedophilia, are virtually the same. One of the points he makes in Charisma, I'll just bring up the article. The article called "Is Paedophilia Next?" In the state, in the kind of question of, now that we have embraced homosexuality, is pedophilia next? That's always been the stated aim, or that is the sexual revolution. Kinsey's sexual revolution has always been about legalizing not just homosexuality but pedophilia. Every form of sexual perversion will be legalized. I mean, it's in Kinsey's own writings, and I don't even want people to go near them, but I'll show you some of the quotations in a while. Lord willing, that will suffice. But one of the arguments he says that is made, and I've seen this plenty of times in homosexual literature, doing research for various projects that I've been doing, he says consensual adult-child sex can actually be beneficial to the child. Or the one of three that's very, very similar to the point being made by Ted Nickerson, that the claim that adult-child sexual relationships cause harm is greatly overstated and often completely inaccurate. And this is the point that Todd, sorry to get his name right, Todd Nickerson makes in his article. He felt like his father was overreacting, and the whole point in the whole article is, well, I can't change who I am. This is just who I am, and I just gotta suffer with it. And he says he contradicts himself a lot of times. So I could never hurt a child, even though he says that the overreaction to it is harmful and all this kind of nonsense. And that obviously drumming up sympathy. The same argument's been used. LGBT people are suicidal. And he says in another part, I was contemplating suicide daily, things like this. Stating too that he doesn't agree with pro-contactors, those pedophiles who seek out, like NAMBLA, their perversity, and that the age of consent laws should be dropped and reduced completely, which is Kinsey's view completely. And then he says another part, this is what a law-abiding pedophile has been reduced to in the society. Again, he kind of just talks about he's below the poverty line. He sounds like an typical American Democrat, sadly. Not a typical one. I mean, but just kind of, I'm only on food stamps, and, I can't get this, and I have emotional issues, and so the state should help me out. And he says, this is what a law-abiding pedophile has been reduced to in society. At times I wonder why I have bothered to stay legal. Wow. Prison maybe would be better, even if with the risk of shanking. And then he says he couldn't hurt a child. But what if you don't view it as hurting a child? Points out, returning to Michael Brown's article here, he thinks this is great. He thinks this Virtual Paedophiles is a great organization. And quoting says, the goals of our organization is to reduce the stigma attached to pedophilia, and that's what they did for decades with homosexuality. Reduce the stigma towards that sexual perversion by letting people know that a substantial number of pedophiles do not molest children, and to provide peer support and information about available resources to help pedophiles lead happy, productive lives. Oh yeah, they're just completely normal. They just have a slight variation compared to everybody else. Same argument made for homosexuality. Our highest priority is to help pedophiles never abuse children. We hope you will explore our website with an open mind. Oh boy. Who, from what I can see as well, it says in returning to the Salon article, this is near the end of the article if you want to make sure these quotations are right. He says, virtuous pedophiles itself has been the go-to place for support of non-offending pedophiles and has been mentioned and endorsed everywhere from NPR, Salon, and The Atlantic to the New York Times and the Toronto Star. Boy. And then he says at the end of the article, or at the end of this paragraph, take it from somebody who has first-hand experience. It is not only doesn't work, it tends to make things far worse. Basically, by railing against it. Please repeat this mantra to yourself. A repressed, unhappy pedophile is a pedophile at risk. Oh, what does that mean? You have to make them happy? I mean, this is just absolute sheer nonsense. And you can read Michael Brown's article on charisma. Again, I reiterate, I am not a fan of charisma at all. But for the sake of research, I would go to the... I just want to look at one or two more things before we finish up and just check how long we've gone into this video. 13 minutes. I'm going to try and keep it under 20 minutes if at all possible. I want to quote from a book called Kinsey, Crimes and Consequences. This is by Judith Reisman, who is probably the best researcher I've come across in this field. She featured in the movie The Kinsey Syndrome, which was made by Chris Pinto. A movie that I highly recommend for people, actually. In one of the paragraphs, the first part of the book, and again, I would, if you want to get further insight into the sexual revolution and the attempt to normalize things like pedophilia, it's not going to be outright. First stages is going to be removing quote-unquote stigma, and then they're going to move forward step by step. And again, the father of the gay rights movement, Harry Hay, is a supporter of NAMBLA, was a supporter of NAMBLA. He's no longer with us. In page 172 of the book, Judith Reisman writes, Happy Day versus Connecticut, a court case in which Pomeroy, that's Waldor Pomeroy, who is a researcher with the Kinsey Institute, admitted under oath that he had sought funds from the sex industry to produce his own child pornography. The March 1991 Department of Defense report on homosexuality and personal security cited Kinsey, Pomeroy, Gebhardt, Martin, Gagnon, Ford, Beach, and Bell as Director of Defense DOD consultants, along with Journal of Paedophilia editor Van Bullo and pedophile advocate John Money. Such men helped to give a cover of science to the subsequent DOD decision to recommend the acceptance of homosexuals in the military in 1993. Rand's study of homosexuality in the armed forces was similarly based in large part on Kinsey's data and conclusions. Many of the sex Institute sex films and videos have been distributed by the Focus International, FI, to universities, colleges nationwide. Among its other erotic media, FI offers the Kinsey 3, hetero, homo, and bisexuality, and about your sexuality for junior high children. Oh boy. The later features scenes of condomless, heterosexual, homosexual, oral, and anal sodomy. All three centers, Sex Institute, NYU, and University of Pennsylvania, have long taught sex using the sexual attitude restructuring technique. Dr. Pomeroy has noted as the SAR is designed to desensitize. That is, to disinhibit all viewers. There is and I dealt with this in a radio show a long time ago, and I'm not going to go back over it again. But if you want more information, I did the radio show I did about a year ago. I think it was about this time last year. I did the homosexual agenda and the normalization of sexual perversion on the radio show. But you can get the MP3, I think. I have to update a lot of the MP3s on the paedophiles.org website because it's no longer available on iTunes. It's only the last 14 shows are available on iTunes. But if you go onto YouTube, you'll be able to watch that radio show from about a year ago, the homosexual agenda and the normalization of sexual perversion. So, and there's a Journal of Paedophilia, which she notes here, the editor board of Paedophilia is this Journal of Paedophilia. The Journal of Paedophilia boasts major leaders in American sexology. All of its editors are self-admitted pedophiles. The magazine is published in Amsterdam, and they are for quote-unquote consensual, unfortunately, I don't want to say it out loud. And there was the pedophile liberation movement in Britain, and these groups, and it all goes back to Kinsey's filthy research, so-called research. So one more quote I want to take from this book, from Judah Reisman's book. She writes in page 233 of the book, the homosexual movement has long been campaigning for a lowering and eliminated age of consent, arguing that boys and girls are fully capable of quote-unquote orgasm. Thus, they should be allowed full sexual rights, including the right to sex with adults. And you see this more and more. And if you don't, I don't know if all the information in the world can help you because you're willfully ignoring it. This is from a movie called The Children of Table 34. This is from Table 34, for those of you not aware, and I deal with it on the radio show that I pointed to, that I did about a year ago. And I done a number of other shows around Kinsey over the years, but this is probably one of the ones where I'm dealing with a lot of clips from a lot of different documentary films, the homosexual agenda and the normalization of sexual perversion. But in this movie, Children Table 34, this is from Sexuality in the Human Male, written by Alfred Kinsey, which comes out in 1948, I think it was, 1948. And I'm just going to play it from this. It's pretty shocking.
By 1981, Dr. Judith Reisman uncovered the role of child sexual abuse in the Kinsey studies in a paper presented to the Fifth World Congress of Sexology in Jerusalem. She documented Kinsey's reliance on the systematic molestation of more than 300 infants and children from 2 months old to 15 years of age. Graph tables depicting sexual activity in children use identical criteria as those in the tables on adult subjects.
And I went back and I took a look at the Kinsey report, Sexual Behavior in the Human Male. And as I reviewed the tables, it struck me as clear as day. How could they get this data? Where would they get these data? How did they know that a 2-month-old baby did or did not have an orgasm? How did they get a record of 26 orgasms in 24 hours for a 4-year-old? A 4-year-old.
If these experiments took place, they involved acts to which no child could provide consent and for which no parent or guardian could provide consent on behalf of the child.
This is patent not You know, and and this research, Table 34 and others like it, is in the Kinsey reports. And this is what the redefinition of marriage and all these other things is based off of. And not only are they pushing for homosexuality, but they're pushing for pedophilia. People thought this was nonsense, or there was no link between the two of them. Go look at the material for yourself. From Alfred Kinsey and Harry Hay, there is an undeniable link between the sexual revolution and the normalization and promotion of pedophilia. What a disgusting and sick day and age we live in. This is Paul Flynn. May God bless you all. Talk to you again soon.